We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping good parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.
Good evening and welcome to yet another Family Fest 2025. I am Angelina Cotton, your moderator this evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we will be exploring diverse parenting styles in today's families. If you are a parent, you know a parent, or you're planning to become a parent, tonight is for you. And so, right now, you can take the opportunity to just send a link to someone who you know may benefit from this discussion tonight. And within a minute or so, I will be introducing to you the very distinguished panelists that I have here. But before that, and I give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, I would like to just give an overview of what we will be unloading this evening. So, parenting styles within the family is one that touches the very core of society. Parents play a fundamental role in shaping the lives, attitude, and futures of their children. So, through various styles and approaches, parents not only influences the individual child, but also impacts the broader community. This panel discussion aims to delve into the complexities and nuances of different parenting styles. We're going to examine their advantages, challenges, and long term effects. So, we also hope with this discussion, rather, to explore the different styles of parenting that exist, to understand how the different approaches to parenting affect each child development, family dynamics, and social outcomes. We also want to provide strategies and practical instruction to help parents to decide on what styles are best and what styles are effective. And last but not least, we want to ensure that you capture rich nuggets to help parents to decide on what styles are best and most effective. And so that we can help to ensure that our children are better for our society, for our families, and for our society. So now, with to help us accomplish that goal, I would like to take the opportunity to invite my panelists to introduce themselves. This evening, we have Chanel Allen, we have Suzanne Kay, and we have Cornelius Bartlett, who is also our founder of the Family Fest Barbados. So I would like to start with Chanel. You can go ahead and introduce yourself this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shawna Aline, as the moderator has said. I am a social worker by profession. I am a child of God, active in ministry at my home church at Messiah's House. I've been in social work for over 10 years now. I've been I have been given the opportunity to work with a number of people groups, from addiction to female sex workers to persons working in poverty, and now children, because I'm now attached to the child care board as a child care officer. So I have a very diverse background, and I'm just looking forward to what the other panelists have to present as well today as we look into this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. And we'll ask Cornelius.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. I thought you were going to go to the lady and leave me to last. Okay, but I'm Cornelius Bartlett, as the moderator said. I am not only a big family advocate, but specifically, I am a massive and super serious advocate for proper parenting. Now, while I do not consider that I have the corner market on parenting, I have particular views about how parenting should be done. So I'm extremely happy tonight to be here. I am a father of three, two girls and one boy, and I'm a grandfather of two grandsons. So I believe that, seeing that I was always very interested in having family. In fact, I tell people that if I had to start my life over again, I would get married a lot earlier to someone who's interested in having at least 7 children. And I know people get really funny when I say that, but I'm very, very serious. Because when you know and understand what the value of children could be in a world that is going down, then you would want to have more children if you believe you know what to do with children. So thank you. That is pretty much who I am.
In a nutshell, yeah. Suzanne?
Good evening. My name is Susan King. I am a retired educator of 41 years experience, both locally here in Barbados. I've also taught in the United States and in the Cayman Islands. I'm a mother of two children, a woman now, a woman and a man, both in their 40s. And I have raised those children um, in for a good time in a single parent home, in the sense that my marriage separated. So I have a slightly different perspective. Um, I'm sure there are other mothers like me in Barbados who have had to do that and who are still doing that. I also have taught for many, many years children who have gone through, problems in the home and having to deal with that as a teacher, and also interacting with children and trying to help them and being a mother to children, because as a teacher quite often you end up being a mother to some of those children who may be going through difficulties. I have a perspective that may be slightly different from some people, in that my degree is in special history. And so when we are looking at any topic relating to family life, I always go back to the history and the sociology of any community that we're looking at. So we have definitions and we have theories, but it is the reality is sometimes different for every society is different. Cultural differences make an impact, and cultural experiences and societal experiences make a difference in how families present themselves. So I'm
Lovely.
hoping,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Continue.
I'm hoping that my contribution will be of help to somebody who may be struggling or looking for answers at this time.
All right. So, well, we're glad to have each of you, and we're looking forward to the diverse perspectives that we will hear tonight that will help our parents. And so, I like the fact that you mentioned that you're going to go into definitions and so on, because before we get talking about parenting styles, I want us to get a grip firstly on what is parenting. And so, perhaps, Suzanne, since you mentioned that, you can help us to understand what is parenting, just to set the context, because sometimes we think we may know. I know a broad definition for parenting is the raising of children and all the responsibilities and activities that are involved in it. And some may think that those responsibilities begins and ends at providing food, clothing, and shelter. So, what is parenting? And the others can jump in after she would have made her contribution. Over to you, Suzanne.
I don't have a textbook definition, but parenting is the molding and the raising of a child into a responsible, happy, and human being that has some of the values that would make that person into a member of the society that is positive. This is just a general, not a textbook, because I don't often like textbook
That's fine. Yes.
definition. And that responsibility doesn't only lie with the biological parents. That's I want to make that abundantly clear, because parenting can happen in different places from different individuals during a child's life. So it is not exclusively, although it is going to be mainly the parents, whether biological or adopted, to have that basic um, responsibility. But parenting is a societal responsibility as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Thank you. Cornelius, you wanted to jump in?
Yes, I will follow on from Suzanne. And like her, I know what the book says, but I like to stick in reality and practicality. The book has some value, but I would say that parenting would involve all of the activities involved in moving a human being from birth to adulthood, which then brings about a construct of two elements. You have good parenting and bad parenting. You have some parenting that one might consider in the middle. But the thing that I would say about parenting is that I think that after we've been on the earth for so many thousands of years, I think that we have the chance to observe and see the relationship between inputs and outputs, the relationship between ingredients and the products that are produced. So while the research and all the definitions are great because you have people who do academic research and they capture things, ultimately, like Suzanne said, we want good parenting, which takes a child from birth and mold them through a variety of activities into adults that can produce and assist the social, economic, and the entire construct of society and move it forward in a positive, productive way.
So we're hearing that parenting is not just about the person that gave birth or looking after a child. It is beyond just the one individual or two individuals in a home. Okay, Chanel, you have anything to add?
I will just follow on from Cornelius to say it's a dynamic process, ever evolving, the goal is adulthood, productive citizen, someone who can contribute to society, right, in a positive way. And the process to get there is ever changing. You got to be shifting, and I want to use the word fluid, in the way that you go about it, right? So it's a very dynamic process, and really and truly, it also encompasses obviously the physical, the emotional, their cognitive development. It's almost like as I said, it's very in depth and it touches on all those things. But our goal at the end of the day is to have a productive citizen, an adult that can impact their society positively. So yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for setting the stage. And but based on the discussion tonight, we said we're going to talk about styles, parenting styles. And I understand or was given about four approaches: the authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, and uninvolved. I want us to talk about a bit about these and to say whether these capture the most prominent approach we see in Barbados or in the wider Caribbean today. I want us to paint a picture of how these styles are reflected in the Caribbean context, or using Barbados as an example, or whether it is not. So let us just talk about those parenting styles that we know as prominent. Who would like to go first?
Okay, what I would say, Angie, is that yeah, you outlined the four main ones, but the research over the years have also included another one. You have a parent called a helicopter parent, a parent that hovers the child, that doesn't let the child think. Okay, um, those four styles you outlined there, they were around for a while in terms of classification. But I would say that I don't think parents very often fit into one exclusively. I think that I see it like a chart, imagine a circular pie. And some persons may have more of the authoritative than authoritarian and less of the permissive and so on and so on. I believe that some parents fluctuate in and out. And I believe that to put it in context, we may have to look at which combination is the best combination. I don't think that there is anyone, I don't think that every day a person who is authoritarian will be authoritarian every single day. I think that you have people that are, in parenting, you slip in and out of these different styles. But what I would want to do is set the tone in terms of styles by saying this. A lot of us parent from the beginning and not from the end. And let me explain to you what I mean. And I'm going to use myself as a personal example. From the time I was a little boy, I always dreamt of having a family. I always knew I was going to have children. And I always I would always dream of the kind of children that I would want to raise. I always thought about the adults. So essentially, I would say that regardless of which style you decide to choose or what combination of styles that you decide to use, I would want us to see styles as ingredients. And I would like us to look at the end zone and ask ourselves the question, which combination of these various proportions will create the kind of adult 25, 30 years from now?
Yes, that's a good question, Cornelius. But before that, I believe the viewers also would want to understand what are these? What you hear authoritarian,
Or,
authoritative.
or,
What is that?
or
Permissive.
that's what you mean. Well, the authoritarian, yes, okay. So I can break that down for you in a nutshell. The authoritarian parent is a parent that sets the law. It's a military parent. Okay, a military parent who it is my way or the highway. The children do not have any flexibility. They don't. The children's opinions don't matter. Uh, and it's a very dangerous type of environment based on research. Then you have authoritative, a parent who set the tone of leadership. They set expected standards, but they allow the children to come into these standards as a natural process and not necessarily drive it down their throat, but use techniques, for example, that are what we call strategic, that helps to mold the child into a particular way of being, which would be leading towards the productive citizens that we talk about. And then you have
Mhm.
permissive. Permissive parents are, and I would probably be judgmental and say permissive parents are probably um, very close to being very close to the ones that are detached. Permissive parents allow children to do whatever they want. Permissive parents are usually the style of being permissive are usually the ones motivated by either ignorance of what is involved in the dangers that they're doing, or trying to be the children's best friend, where they believe that the child should be allowed to do whatever makes them happy, whatever pleases them. And then the detached parent, that's the worst parent of all. That's the parent that's not a parent. That's the one that is not involved. And that parent could be a parent giving the child a lot of material things, which we know is not really parenting. It's probably a very small part. That type of parent is extremely detached, but could be the kind of parent that could give a lot of stuff. The important thing that I would want to make a note here as I close off on that is that a lot of people, when they think about children, they think about money and what it costs. And I would want to put on the table here now that the most important things for raising children actually do not cost money. The most important things for raising children to be the productive, loving, well-rounded, well-adjusted citizens do not cost money. So for all the people out there who, for example, say, but children are so expensive, we choose how expensive they get. I'm just saying that the most expensive things are not things that involve money. These are the most
Right.
valuable and most powerful things does not involve a
That's
tangible cost.
That's a good point. But I would like Chanel to jump in here as well and just let us know when you think about the styles of parenting, what type of parenting would do we embrace in the Caribbean or practice as a Caribbean people or in Barbados in particular?
Well, in my role as a childcare officer, I've been seeing all four types being displayed. All right. So for instance, but more so the authoritarian, the permissive, and the neglectful parent. Those are the ones that we see the most of, right? Very seldomly you will see an authoritative parenting style presenting, right? But for
I
instance,
don't
with
think
the
sorry, I didn't think we got a chance to hear what that is because you're thinking authoritarian, authoritative. It sounds pretty
oh
much the same. What's the difference
oh
between those two?
so yes, so let's break it down a little bit, right? So the authoritative parent is a parent that can be categorized as like warm, supportive. They will set clear boundaries for their children. Um, they encourage independence. You understand? They would use a lot of reasoning. Now, the authoritarian is different. The authoritarian more looks at rules, very strict rules that have unrealistic high expectations, no warmth, no love. They use punishment as discipline. All right. So they always quick to pick up something to lash out at a child, right? Permissive now is this one can be categorized as few rules. So like Carnelia said, I want to be my
Yes,
child
yes,
best friend. So we rubbing shoulders together, right? So permissive and then neglectful, as the word says,
yes,
no guidance, no attention, emotionally unavailable. The child is left to his own devices and what's not. So I hope I've made
yes,
the definitions a little bit clear, right?
yes.
So for me now, as I said, in my role as a childcare officer, I've been seeing the last three: authoritarian, permissive, and lots of neglectful parents. Lots of
Mhm.
neglectful parents. Um, so my thing is that in this culture, like before I can say parents, because I grew up in a single parent home, right? And there was a mixture of authoritative and authoritarian, but it was heavy on the authoritarian until I was able to speak out and, talk to my mom and say, come on, we got to work on this because the expectations, the punishment, something is not working. And then we were able then to have a discussion where we sat down and we talked. So having a parent who is open to conversation is more linking with the authoritative perspective, right? Um, so yeah, so as I said, in Barbados, where I'm seeing a mixture more heavy
Sure.
on neglectful, but
Mhm.
authoritarian and permissive. Yeah.
Wow. And sometimes, we will hear uh, what people call old school parenting. And how do we draw the dichotomy of what we call old school parenting and the shift to modern parenting? When did that occur? So, Susanna, I'll ask you to speak on that.
I don't know if you can call it a shift.
Okay.
It is just that the world changed, but most of the persons of the last generation, like myself, when I say that, in my age group would have come up with, I would say, authoritarian. My parents would fall into authoritative because even although they had the strict rules and everything, we still knew that they loved us. But a lot of parents of that generation, the earlier generations, did not show affection and love openly. In other words, there was not a lot of hugging and that kind of open expression because they are coming out of a generation that didn't really have that as a norm. So they were not like that. But we knew they loved us. But we had rules that were, I would say, were not, this is just my personal experience, were not, um, you know, we, we couldn't do certain things. We had education was a very big thing in our family and respect. There was not as a lot of the hugging and so, but we knew they loved us and they cared for us, and we had a bit of both. It was more a lot of authoritarian, yeah, because you had to follow your parents' rules. Luckily for
Mhm.
me, in our home, my father and mother, they never really. My father more so, because my mother would get angry sometimes and give you throw something or something, but they never used corporal punishment, and I think that was rare in my family, but we got punished by being isolated and had things taken away from us if we did not follow the rules. So we come out of a colonial past which deals with a lot of authoritarian attitude. And it is only recently that the conversations, which now would come more in the authoritative, that have begun to come into the limelight. As a teacher, I tried my best, and it is sometimes, I'll tell you, easier to deal with other people's children than your own, because when you're so close to your own, it is sometimes difficult, depending on the home situation, to spend these long time talking to them. But in a classroom, you have that time as part of your work time, and you can also mix the two of them, those styles. So to me, we have now more of the uninvolved and the permissive, unfortunately. We have gone now the other end of the spectrum. And this is what we are seeing. So we have moved from authoritarian, authoritative, now being the norm, and we have moved in the society to the more permissive and uninvolved type of parenting, which is, and again, you have to look at the society, because it is not right across the social groups. It is not right across, because there are still parents, and I know that I am the chairman at Foundation School, so I know when I see the cross section of children who are given the problems, you can look and see what is the social background and what is the economic background that most of these children who are coming and parents are coming. And it is not only about money, it is about how the family is constructed. Is there a parent living in the home? Do the mother and father get along? Is there a extended family? So we can get into some of that. So I don't think when you have these categories, sometimes they cross borders, if you see what I'm saying. And it depends on the social and the economic circumstances for the child. So it is a complex kind of discussion, I would say. So we have to look at that and in detail. I'll get into that a little more, into the historical background of where we are now. But to me, you have to look at categories. I don't like categories when it comes to human beings, because sociology says you can't put human beings in the category, because they do all kind of things.
Intersect as well as cross over. Yeah.
Right. So you have to look at it a little more, with a more broader mindset.
Mindset.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very insightful. Would Chanel or Cornelius like to add anything there as it relates to our context in the Caribbean, and rather the old school and modern type of parenting that you'll hear?
Well, what Suzanne caught my attention with was the mention of corporal punishment. I know a lot of people, even in religious circles, they use the scripture, in my opinion, incorrectly, about spare the rod and spoil the child. I am definitely against the idea of corporal punishment for children. I am very much in support of punishment, but the punishment does not have to be of a corporal nature.
Right.
The concept, and I'm speaking from even my own experience. I mean, I have a daughter, for example, that is 16, and she never even got a tap on the hand. And I know some people look at me, in a particular way, because we are so tied to our colonial past and what was passed on. And even in talking about the colonial past that Suzanne mentioned, we need to always look at what we are passing on. In other words, we talk about the violence in schools and all that, and we are beating our children into submission. And my question is, what message do you send to your child when every time you want your child to conform, or every time they do something wrong, you choose the whip? And then when they go to school and they do the same thing when somebody is not giving them what they want, or they don't agree with something, and they use violence on the person, then the parent who is beating the stuffings out of their child does not seem to realize the possibility of the connection. And I think that a lot of parents don't intend to be bad parents. A lot of parents who are not doing great, it's not that they intend not to be great. I think there's a level of ignorance in terms of making the connection between what they're inputting and what they're getting out. I honestly believe that some people innocently are doing, to put it bluntly, a lot of nonsense in terms of parenting, because they're just ignorant, which is why I'm so happy that we do things like this discussion we're having here, that maybe somebody could sit down and listen to this and hear some wisdom from somebody like Suzanne or somebody like Chanel, who is involved in the whole business of children and the connection between children and the kind of parenting styles. But I really honestly would want to probably just say that I'm totally against corporal punishment. Totally.
All right. So Cornelius is against corporal punishment. Chanel, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I'm against it too as well, right? I prefer discipline over punishment. And there's a difference between the two. But what I wanted to jump in with Carius was saying something that triggered a thought that parenting is learned behavior as well, right? For
Yes.
instance, like I parent the way, or you know what, I have a choice to parent the way I was parented or choose a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of persons only know what they were, what my mommy did to me, my father did to me, and that carries on from generation to generation to generation. It's time for us to flip the script. We gotta do something different because it may have worked for us, but if we look back, if we really are honest with ourselves, they got some things that happened to us that really truly wasn't kosher, it wasn't good at all. We were able to overcome because we are a resilient generation. But right now, the things that have been meted out to us then can't met out to some of our children today. So I just want to state the point is that parenting is learned behavior through socialization because we saw something, but we also have a choice to choose what we're going to do going forward when we get children. Some people are thrown into parenting, some people are planned to get children, and then that too has an impact on how life is too as well, and the dynamics of how that happened, right? I mean, there's so many different tenets that can go in all different directions where parenting is very diverse, right?
Yeah.
Also want to come back to the discipline. Like I prefer discipline. Children need to know what they're doing right from what they're doing wrong. All right. And not all behavior is bad behavior. It could be developmental behavior. So the things that they are pushing the boundaries and stuff of learning something, but because it is out of timing with the parent or the parent cannot see the beat, the lash. But for me, I believe in discipline. There's times where you have to sit down and get to say, you're doing this. Why I am disciplining you is because of A, B, C, D. You understand? And not punishment as in that you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. So you can just whip you with the whip all the time. So positive discipline over punishment. That's my thought on it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I'm just reflecting on the comment from Suzanne that mentioned that all of these things has some links to our colonial past. And so it is time that we let go of those things and embrace what healthy parenting is. And as you all would have mentioned, that involves a bit of every different type of parenting style. And so everyone has raised very realistic and poignant points as we lay the foundation for the topic. I just want to for those joining us, whether Facebook or YouTube, we welcome you as we're discussing how parenting styles impact child development and society. And so we have just discussed the parenting styles, the different approaches, and their effects on society. And we want to look, before we look at what the approaches are, I want to give Suzanne, because you were mentioning the historical context. I just want to give you just about a minute or so to just share with us a little bit more about that aspect.
Now, I am a realist in the sense that we are living in Barbados, and this is where, and the Caribbean, and this is where my focus in the study of history. I always was more interested in what happened to us as a Caribbean people than maybe other societies, although it's all linked up. But when you look at the bulk of, or the majority of people in the Caribbean who are of African descent, most of them, it means that when you look back, and I hear people say things like, oh, that happened, slavery happened ever since. So you don't need to look at that. And they're so wrong because generation to generation, things are passed down. When we look at the larger demographic in our society, you are seeing that in terms of parenting, we still have a matriarchal society where most women are the ones who have the children, not all, and it depends too on the socioeconomic um, the, um, profile. A lot of women are doing it alone, even today, which means a father may be present in the sense that he might come and visit once in a while, or he might, come and bring money. Because as Cornelius, a lot of people think it is the child money, the child support that is what is necessary, and that is all. And you have then a situation where you have a main bread earner trying to do all of this parenting that we are talking so nicely that is written down here. But what they're really doing is trying to survive in terms of the basic needs of the child. And a lot of the time, unless there's an auntie, an uncle, a grandmother, and remember that in these days, now, a lot of grandparents are still working and not like before. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother when I was growing up because she didn't work outside of the home. So we lived all in one area, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and grandfather. So therefore, that family unit. In slavery, families were separated. That is basically, if you think about what happened, they were either separated on the point of sale, they were separated because the planter decided he was going to send the man of the family one way and the mother another way. And therefore, you had that you had that kind of family structure coming up in through the years. So we still have to look at that and see what impact has that really had on the family. The
That's
family
right.
is not a unit of the nice white picket fence, mother, father, um, children, and everybody contributing. That picture is not what most Caribbean people have experienced. And this is not to say that they produce bad people, because we have mothers who have done an amazing job and none of the children end up in jail. So therefore, it means, and grandmothers and aunties and so on. But when we come to deal with a family situation, the first thing you have to find out and investigate is where this child, what is this child's experience in the family? In other words, is there a father that is present? Is the father consistent? Is the mother able to spend time with them, or is she working to support? Is there a grandmother? So the family dynamics. And this is something that has come down over the years, and we tend to ask the question, why is it that in our society most of the crime has a particular demographic? It
That's
has
right.
that demographic because it has come through the years with
Yes.
these deficits that we are unwilling to talk about. Because then you hear
Mm-hmm.
people saying, "Oh, why you gonna talk about that?" I heard a minister recently talked about the scars of slavery, and people got very upset by that. But it was perfectly right. It was the right statement. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, we have to look and admit it. This is where, when we are counseling people, when we are talking to mothers and talking to fathers and brothers and sisters, we have to understand and separate ourselves from where we are. Because I have been through both ends of the stick, so I know what it is. I know what it is to have a family with mother, father, auntie, uncle, the whole 9 yards. But I also know what it is to have mother and two children. And
Yeah.
when that is the case, you have then to understand that things are going to be slightly different in how they are counseled, and how whatever help that is going to be given to them has to be in the context in which the sociological and psychological
Psychological.
context is
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to
Yes,
be
yes.
real, if you're not going to have the right picket fence, mommy, daddy get married, and there's a white wedding, that is for some
Mm-hmm.
people, but for the majority of children, it is not that.
That's not the case.
It is
And
not that.
I'm glad we gave you that opportunity, because it's important for the audience and for all of us rather to understand where we came from and how that has affected us or impacted us now, so that we can now release consider and then release and move forward to what the right way of parenting should be. And as we speak about the correct way of parenting and the styles, as we spoke tonight, we have not come to a consensus that there is any one style that is the best. So tell us. We'll start with you, Chanel, to tell us how do parents go about parenting, figure out what's the best style of parenting as their children, evolve from the different stages.
Okay, so developmental stages are key, all right, with your child, because the way you parent a 2-year-old, you're not going to parent a 12 or 13-year-old. So parents just have to be conscious of where their child is at. This is your child. This is your heart in human form. So you have a responsibility to pay attention to what your child is going through. All right. So we talk about the 4 parenting styles. And really and truly, we can't pinpoint and say this one is gonna work, that one is gonna work. As I said in my opening remarks, is about being fluid, knowing where your child is at, having open communication, observing, knowing, listening to your child. That is where we are at. Because the thing is that although you have an authoritative style, that can work sometimes, but then sometimes you may have to be a bit of an authoritarian. And then some days you may have to be a permissive. So realistically, you kind of flow in between those 3. What we don't want you to be is a neglectful parent. You understand? Because then that's on the other side of the spectrum. But for me, in a world where they got real challenges, I mean, it's going to be hard for a parent to say, I only going to do authoritative. That would be a death sentence. That's parental suicide to say, I'm only going to choose one. You have to look to see where your child is at, what developmental stage is at. You got to observe, you got to know your child, and then you have to operate to suit. All right. And you have to make sure that you're not influenced negatively by external sources, because a lot of persons will want to tell you, this is the way, that is the way. This is your child. You have to know what's best for your child.
So it's about knowing your child and doing what's best for the child. And it could be a combination, minus the neglectful parenting. It could be a combination of the other styles. Cornelius.
Yeah, okay. I want to take the conversation back to basics in terms of, remember at the beginning I said we need to start at the end zone before we start at the beginning. If we start at the beginning, what's going to happen is that you're going to parent by emotions and ego. Remember I said earlier as well that a lot of people are trying their best parenting, but they're parenting from a place of ignorance. Now, Suzanne, who's the best history teacher in the whole world, taught me at school, just gave us a good exposition of what we're looking at when we talk about the foundation of parenting. But I want to also add 2 things as I make this presentation. In the plantation life coming out of slavery, we also had the stud effect where men were used just for breeding.
Correct.
And if we look now at the way how
Right.
some men, which is why having a relationship with God is so important. I know a lot of people want to create on Christianity, or some people, but you see having faith where you have a connection with God, where that, to me personally as a man, that is the only way that I escape that foolish living. Because I used to have that lifestyle, where you have you're interested in all these women. Now, unless a man and a woman become self-aware, that is going to be something that's going to go against you in your ability or your arsenal of parenting. A man must come to the point where he recognizes that, you know what, there's something affecting me negatively, that I feel I need to change women every 2 months. Where did it come from? Then you have people who, for example, are given to emotions. They parent by how they feel. There are men and women who have mental health and emotional issues. These are all things in the part of what a human being can be going through when they bring a child into this world. And I want us to take this very seriously. I'm passionate about this because I have done a lot of work on myself and still don't work on myself. But when I look at people who are totally unconscious, just going through the emotions, and it's not trying to talk down about anybody or trying to place judgment on anyone. I am interested in Barbados getting better. I am interested in seeing children come up in an environment where they feel a sense of love and empowerment, and they're looking forward with excitement to what life has to offer, and they're looking forward to getting married. I went and did a session at a secondary school a couple of weeks ago, and one of the boys in class told me straight he don't want to get married. And he told me, I don't want to get married because when this woman divorced me, she can get half of whatever I have at 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You have children that are thinking materialistic like that already. There's no concept of loving another human being unconditionally. So the truth of the matter is that I would want to say that we need to promote these conversations where people get to be aware that, parenting is about looking at the end zone. What kind of man do I want my little baby, cutie Jonathan, or my little Sarah Lee, or my little Micaiah, or my little Sarah, to be when they grow up? And that is, and I'm speaking from personal experience, because essentially, when my children were babies to now they're now young adults, teenagers going up, I used to be thinking about the kind of man that I want my son to be. I used to be thinking about the kind of woman I want my daughter to be. So the kind of love, opening the door for my daughter, for example, telling her how beautiful she is, constantly, giving her that kind of reassurance. That was all a very conscious and a very deliberate and intentional behaviors on my part as a parent. And I'm just saying that I want to bring along other fathers to think the same way. And I'm saying that that's why I see these conversations as so important. Yeah?
Yeah. I remember hearing a statement, somebody said that if you, especially for fathers, right? I'm sure it goes for mothers as well. But if it is that the person that you want your daughter or your son to marry, you have to be that person, and so because they take cues from who you are. And so those are very, very good points. So you
That
look
is
at the
true.
end.
That is true,
Yes.
Angie. But what we'll also want to say too is, yes, that's what they were modeled. But there is a human beings in emotional intelligence. One of the things we learn is that human beings don't care about facts or about truth. They care about how they feel. And what I would say to you is that the ingredients that we as parents, whether mother or father, put into our children, we need to put the kind of ingredients that creates a human being's the emotional construct and the mental construct that we want to have at the back end when they become adults. So in other words, I want my daughter and my son to feel empowered. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel loved, because we as human beings cannot give out what we don't have inside. And the reason why you see so much loveless, so much heartless, when I think of boys, for example, and I'm going to be very, very candid here. When I think about a boy who somebody could mash in a fit and could take out a gun and shoot you at point blank range because they don't want sorry, or somebody who come in a place and kill you for $20 in your shop. What I see there is a loveless creature, a person who did not get that reassurance and that love and that softness that was needed. So I don't care what anybody says, right? The problems in our society, we can blame the schools, we can blame the church. Ultimately, the crowning place that we have to look, the main place we have to look is at parenting. It is failed parenting. There's no manual, people say, but there's a manual.
Right. So
Failed parenting is the reason.
I like that you said that, because that kind of links to my next question, about because when we look, as you mentioned, said we look at society and the many problems that we have in society, particularly with crime, and we will say, it is the upbringing of the child, the parents. So to what extent are parents responsible for how children turn out as adults? Because are they the only components, or are there other factors? Suzanne?
Parents are, I would say, have to take the the bigger burden or the bigger responsibility for molding the children. But also there are other factors, there are other agencies like the school and the church and the voluntary groups like guiding and the advanced core or so. Those groups also have a significant influence, because what can happen in a family, for example, you have two children or three children, and they are very different. And in our society, an academic child, a child who is good and smart, and because learning or the ability to learn and do well in school is dependent on a number of things, nature and nurture. In other words, you inherit genes from your parents. So there will be those children who have inherited, let's say, an artistic gene, which will be different from an academic gene. And I think what happens, and what I have experienced with my children, is that you have to recognize that children are going to be different. And when you have I had one easy to raise, one more difficult. And you have to realize that it is not that the child is a bad child or anything, it's just different. And if you don't understand the differences, and it is easier, as I said, I would be in a classroom with 30 children and I could get along with all 30 of them and understand the differences. But when it comes to something close to home now, as a parent, you expect sometimes more from your child than the child has the ability to give because the child is a different child. And this is what causes some problems. And especially if you don't have the support of, let's say, a family circle, because somebody in that family now might gravitate to that child that you're getting difficulties with and be able to understand it better than you. Or a teacher might be able to help in that way. We also have to look at a lot of other things. For example, you have a child that is coming up in a home, let's say with a single parent, a female single parent, which is the more common one than the male. And what I found, especially when I was at a school to which I had been transferred and asked to go, it was a totally different school from foundation. And I would go to work very early on mornings, say 7:30. And children would come to the office and they would say to the secretary, is mom there? She would say yes. Say, I could go in to see her, and I would tell her, yes, send in the child. All the little child would say is, morning, mom, how you doing? You okay? I say, yes, I okay. You okay? And the child gone on its way smiling and merry. She asked me one day, why do you let them come? Because they ain't come to you for anything. I said, you have to understand the sociology of this country. Some of those children have left home and not seen a parent for the morning. If their mother works at a hotel, she is going to work since 6:30, and they have to fend for themselves. And I am the first adult that they are seeing for the morning. So all they want is somebody to give them affirmation. And a lot of the children that we see have problems in the family are because they do not feel affirmed and fulfilled in the family. So they seek then somebody outside. And this is why I always see teaching as a calling, not a profession. Yes, I had to be paid in order to eat, but I would never go to work and say, I ain't going to do this because I ain't getting paid for it. Because you are dealing with children. So if a child come to you and say, morning, I want to say, and she couldn't understand why these kids will come. But I understood because I study my society. That I am the adult that they're identifying with. A lot of children too do not have the affirmation that they are worthwhile because they may be different. They may not be getting as good marks as another child in terms of, we are very academic people because colonialism says to us, thankfully that is changing. So I'm happy that you have the
Yeah.
trades now and you have the creative economy and you have all kinds of things being presented to make children feel worthwhile. But when we
Yeah.
were growing up, if you didn't get into a particular school, or so people would look at you and it's still happening. Don't fool yourself. You watch and see. And therefore, one child feels neglected or not so worthwhile compared to the other one. So therefore, you have an issue there. What the system needs to happen, and I have been preaching this forever, and I don't care what people say, we need to put more support in the school system to help these children. I know people can say the teacher is not the parent. I hear teachers say, I am there to teach them manners. That is not true. You are there to teach a child. If manners is part of that, then you do it. But we there are going to be deficits in the family, and we cannot expect that we are going to have a Pollyanna situation where everything is going to become good immediately. And we have children falling through the cracks. That is what is happening in Barbados now. We are seeing the ones who fell through the cracks, right? And we see with the opening of the country now to the world, you see what the world has brought to us now, the violence.
Yeah.
So we have to provide a buffer with the social worker lady who is here. God bless you. We need more of you. We need more support systems. We're not taking away from the family. What we're doing is providing a buffer and a support where the
Right.
deficits are.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that perspective because it's important for the society to understand that we need to shift our minds to how we see children. And I think that that explanation was a very, very critical one for us to understand that, children, that they're not just parents, but us as a society. And I want to, if anybody else want to jump in there, I'll give you about a minute or so to do so. And then I will jump to the next question.
Yeah, well, I want to really, I was there getting cold bumps listening to Suzanne
Yes,
because I mean, like, I could listen to her whole night. I
I agree
honestly,
with you. I agree with
and
you.
I know we have limited time. But it really, I just trust that persons who are listening now really listen over to this because our children, what I would say, right, is that all of the things that we are noticing that we don't like in our children, we need to look back at parenting. That's what I would say. Because essentially all of the fallout for poor parenting comes out or play out in the symptom of children that are struggling, that are fighting, that are going on drugs, that have suicidal ideations. It all maps back to parenting.
Yeah. Uh, all right. If Chanel, if you don't want to add there, I will go to the next question and talk about that. Sometimes as parents, particularly I can speak for myself as well, we become so conscious of not practicing the past mistakes of your parents or other people as we talk about your colonial past. You want to do better. But sometimes you can move to the other extreme. So you might move to the more permissive type of parenting, and finding it difficult to have a healthy balance of discipline and not wanting to break the spirit of the child. So my question is, how can parents balance discipline and the freedom to foster healthy development of the child? Shauna?
I was just gonna say I'll go first. All right. For me, when I think about parenting and that balance that you speak of, I'm thinking about boundaries, setting clear, consistent boundaries with your child. One thing I learned when I was growing up is that the confusion between one parent wanting something and another parent wanting something completely different, and you being caught in the middle, being a confused child. And the thing is, it's almost like you get pulled here and you pull there. So the thing is that a good cooperating strategy needs to be put in place. You all need to agree on something. Parents need to agree on what they're going to do, because if we don't agree, the child, similarly to me, how it was when I was younger, will be confused. Very, very,
Mhm.
very confused, because
Correct.
you're trying to please one and still trying to please the other, and you caught in the middle of all of the madness. So for me, I would say one of the things I would submit is, setting clear, consistent boundaries, and parents need to talk and need to have a parenting plan put in place. I mean, we might hate each other because we're not in a relationship anymore. It broke down, whatever. But we gotta think about each other. The child is the person in the middle who we are trying to develop into being this productive citizen, if that's what the goal is. You understand? But for me, as I said, we need to stop confusing our children, and we need to set clear, consistent boundaries and stuff like that. Yeah.
All right. Suzanne, you look like you wanted to add something there.
They can only agree if they are on the same page.
That's right.
And this
Yeah.
is where the problem is going to happen and happens.
Mm.
Hmm.
And what happens in the cases of the males, and I can tell you this from experience, not only here, but overseas as well, is that sometimes that is where they become absent. In other words, the mother who has the responsibility mostly in those times, not always, because the dynamic has changed now to some cases where you have single fathers now doing a very good job too as well. But if you don't have men who feel valued and who feel that they have worth, and you see, coming out of again of a slave society, I have said where our deficit is too, is that we are not talking to our children and mostly to our males about what it is to be a man. I was so happy to hear my history students say about the what happened to the families, and I realized that in history, this is this is something that has come down the line. The men were breeders. In other words, how many children, how many slaves can you produce? You understand? They were never in a situation where and then sometimes, even if they had a family on the plantation, sometimes that family was broken because they would take him up and send him someplace else. To another plantation, so the family structure with males. A lot of boys, and I can tell you this, and my favorite, I like both boys and girls. I like all my students, but boys were always close to me. You know why I like them? Because they don't bear no grudge. You would just stand up and talk a boy and tell him the whole 9 years about why he bad behave. And next thing you see him 15 minutes on the corridor and he got dunks or ackies or something, and he can say, Mommy wants some? He don't forget that you just quarreled with him for nearly 15 minutes about his behavior. But they need the confirmation. There are not a lot of male role models in the home sometimes, and they need confirmation that I am worthwhile. They don't know the history, and this is where our education system. I'm so glad to hear about educational transformation. Every single child in this island of Barbados should know that the history, what happened to them, how they got to be where they are, what happened in their family, if they could know that, what brought us to this point. I heard a young man that has gone into the advanced school the other night saying he didn't feel that he was useful to do anything. And somebody tell him, come to the advanced school and we will help you. He said he went in there and the people made him feel as if he could be something worthwhile. Now he is one kid now that ain't going on the block with a gun. You understand what I'm saying? Not that all the blocks have guns, but that is where he would have gravitated to feel important. But now somebody is saying to him, here is an alternative route. You are worthwhile. Sometimes all it needs is for that young man to have somebody who said, look, you can do this. Because he's not getting that at home. So now he have an alternative. He can go and find that self-actualization through criminality, or he can find a useful, productive way of doing it. But he's going to seek that actualization because that is natural for a teenager. Teenage boys want to know, they got a girlfriend and they're walking. You see what I watch now when I go up at the school, I watch the sixth formers boys walking and they feel that them on the school. You can walk and see how they're walking, that this is who in charge. Because the boys especially, you walk and see where they get the sixth form, north fifth form, them is in charge. And that means that they feel proud of themselves. They feel good about themselves. And this can only happen if not only the family, but the school and the other agencies in society come together and work and get it done and get it fixed. And that's the only way we're going to do it. Through education and putting the programs in place to make these young men feel worthwhile before they are 18 and 19. We have to do it when they are 10, 11, 12. We have to do it early. Cannot wait until the negative forces have taken over.
Lovely. If Cornelius, if you don't have a comment towards that, I would like to shift to a comment that I see here from Marquita that has brought a very important topic as it relates to neurodivergence. And as parents, as educators, people who are responsible for molding children, what can we speak to that, especially in this society when we're seeing more and more children are being diagnosed with different types of neurological challenges. Anyone would like to take that?
I went to a meeting. I can come in here because I went to a meeting that was held by the Ministry of Education, Technology, and so on. And they were talking about the inclusivity. In other words, in trying to include children with different challenges. There are some children who can be included in a regular system with certain provisions, but a child that has severe, I would say, neurological or something, they need to get the diagnosis early. And this is where in the primary schools, I'm not saying it is only the government, but a parent might see something that is wrong. It's still the parent's responsibility. You see something wrong with your child, you see some behaviors or something, it is that parent's responsibility to reach out and get a diagnosis and get, the help for the child. Now, if the school system is going to, still prepare itself to give that child an opportunity, it will depend on the diagnosis. And if that child can be included in a regular school with certain assistance or certain changes for that child. For example, a child in a wheelchair that is perfectly okay in terms of his reading and writing, you can build the ramps and you can build the physical structure. But if it is a neurological thing and it is something that is going to affect that child being able to integrate with children without this problem, then we might still have to look at special conditions for those children. But the parent has to see. If you see a child at age 5 or 4, 3, something strange is happening to them, or they're not hearing properly, or they're not, that is your responsibility and the government really has been doing to try to step up with people empowerment to give children with any kind of disability the opportunity to be diagnosed and helped. And this is important. And the movement, I support that 100% because a child should be given the opportunity to be as successful as it can be, given whatever challenges it may have.
That is very important because as you're speaking, I'm thinking of growing up and seeing children with different challenges, and you get labeled as being bad. In my context, if a child was moving too much, you will ask, what is wrong with you? You have stinging nettles, and so children will grow up hearing these type of things, and they begin to believe that something is so wrong with them that they really cannot function well. And so it is important that we adopt the right perspective and understanding for what is happening now, even though I also am aware that there are different things that in our environment that could also contribute to what is happening to our children, while more and more children are being diagnosed with challenges. But that's another topic. Chanel, you're shaking your head. Do you want to say something?
I was just agreeing with you about, the other factors that are causing our children to have neurological deficiencies or whatever, and as you said, there's another conversation. But I wanted to talk about parents of neurodivergent children and the support that they need here in this country that may be missing too as well. It is not easy raising a child who is neurodivergent, and I believe that we can do more to support them, either with education, social groups, respite, those things that those types of parents really need going forward, because a child wants to be integrated and feel like a child. No
Yeah.
problem. And I'm all for it. I am all for it because they are persons too. They're people too, and they deserve
Mm-hmm.
everything that can be
Mm-hmm.
meted out for them. So my
Yeah.
thing is that with the child, the parent has to be at their best too as well. So all the systems, the village. I wanted to talk about the village, but I know we are running out of time. But
Yeah,
how the
that
village
that
needs
was
to
my
really
next that
return.
was my next topic actually. Yes,
Yeah, like the
continue.
village, because the village was eradicated. We really need back like a village where everybody's working together for the betterment of the children, and obviously their investments now makes our society better in the future. So for me, when I think about a neurodivergent a parent of a neurodivergent child, I think about all the things like access, the things that they need, which is not only physical, as in like wheelchairs and ramps
Mhm.
and stuff, but also the additional support. Like other societies have programs, I guess, because they have the financial wherewithal to have all of these things. So they support their children and their parents. So there's a little bit more that we can do here in Barbados. And then there needs to be more visibility to those organizations that do offer help, that parents know where to go, because we've been finding out in some of the persons that we work with, they don't know where to go. You would think, oh, it's Barbados is only 166 square miles. You have a phone book, you have the internet, but education and knowledge is power, and those organizations need to be, more visible in a way that we can be able to say, you can go here, or they know exactly if I have a problem with my neurodivergent child and I need a resource somewhere, I know where to
Cool.
go. So more visibility
Mhm.
as well, and
Mhm.
support.
Mhm. That is extremely important. And as I think about that, I'm thinking about parents and themselves, the pressure they feel when they have children that are neurodivergent. And I know in some situations when some of the fathers realize that the children, this is what happens, sometimes they leave and the mom is left with all the pressure to support this child. And so, thank you, Marquita. That was a very, very poignant and important point to the conversation that we're having this evening. And even as we're winding down, um, I was thinking a little bit more about the role, as we spoke about earlier, of parenting. It is such an important integral role, but yet the Bible tells us that children are like arrows in the hand of a warrior. And when you think of a warrior, warriors need to be trained, and because they need to be trained, I'm thinking what type of some of them were mentioned before, but what are some ways that we can recommend that parents get the support and the training? Because you would think something as important as parenting, you would see it in schools, or they have a training as soon as you come out of school or something to that effect. Is there any other contribution to that aspect?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say that all of us are ignorant to something. Okay? So if you have ignorant spots in your parenting, that's fine. It is not fine to keep it that way though. We living in 2025, and sometimes I just get positively overwhelmed at the amount of knowledge out there on various things in terms of improving yourself. So I want to promote the concept to everybody listening right now and in the future. As a parent, you need to keep learning, because you cannot give out what you don't have inside of you. You cannot become emotionally intelligent if you don't learn about emotional intelligence and become mindful and self-aware and all of that. If you continue to be the way you were before, there's a saying that goes like, if you keep doing what you've always done, you will get what you've always got. So learning. Next thing I want to promote is the idea of love. See, love is going to motivate you to do things that you wouldn't think that you would be able to do normally. We need to love on our children. As parents, we need to let love be part of that. While we engender the traits of discipline, we need to make sure that love is in there, tempered with that. And I want to just say this that as well. You see, consistency. A lot of parents, right, sensing children get mixed messages. I remember when my son was in the supermarket or in the bank, he was messing with the rope many years ago when he's going 20 shortly. But when he was like 6 or 7 years old, he was messing with the rope in the bank. And the lady said to him, obviously assuming that I'm a regular Bajan parent that do corporal punishment, she said, "Why you don't stop interfering with that rope before your father spank you?" And he looked at the lady, a 6-year-old little boy, looked at the lady and said, "My father usually tell you something before he does anything, and he hasn't said anything yet." So he confidently told you, "Well, my father is not going to do anything to me because he usually give you a warning first." So my son knew what to expect from daddy because I'm consistent, and I want to push the idea of being consistent. So love, learning for life constantly as a parent, and being consistent. Those are the three things that I would want to push. I have grandchildren now. I have two grandsons, and one of the things that I do is I see myself as their parent as well. I try to make sure they come by me at least one weekend every month. We go fishing, we do play cricket, we play football, we catch birds in Hawaii. Because another thing, I know we don't have time, but a lot of the children are bored stiff, and that's why they stick to the tablets and the devices, because we are not finding the time as parents to engage our children in the healthy activities that we did when we were growing up. That's my 2 cents worth.
Yes. And so as we wrap up, we are about that time. I will just give Suzanne and Chanel 30 seconds to leave something with the audience.
While
Something more.
parenting, yeah,
Nugget.
while parenting is the major responsibility of mother, father, and the biological or adoptive family, whatever it is, I think as a nation, we have to realize that the school system, and I'm so happy, as I said, to see educational transformation on the, I'm hoping it will bring some more of the support systems that deal with the psychological and emotional and social problems. The parenting of the children is still a nation responsibility because the parents are there most of the time, but we as adults who meet them in the schools, who meet them in their clubs or wherever, still have the responsibility to mold them in a direction. If you see them going, I know people say, don't want to talk to your children is cursing. Well, if you're frightened to say something to a child, it means that you really have a problem. I'm not saying that some of them may not be aggressive or so on, but you can start up a conversation depending on your tone of voice and how you approach them. There's nothing wrong with it. The school, the church, everybody has to take a parental role if we are to stem some of the negativity, and we have to control the influx of the technology, some of the things on the cell phones parents have now. We didn't even touch that because that is another reason for some of the problematic behavior. So we have
Yes.
to look at that in a separate maybe discussion because we can open Barbados to the world, but we're taking in both the good and the bad. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to control that as well. But every single adult who is a positive role model in this society should try, as long as they are alive and able, to help some child every single day that you meet them. There's nothing wrong with you opening your mind and your heart to them. And I'm sure some of them will respond positively. We can't just leave it to the parents alone. It takes a village to raise a
Yes.
child.
Thank you. Thank you. Chanel?
Yes, I want to say that, echo that same sentiment. It takes a village. Our children are sponges, they pick up from us. So if we are a really bad example to them, guess what? They can turn out like us if we don't be careful. So we need to be careful that we are promoting the type of person that we want our children to be. All right. And one other thing I would like to say is that you know what, we talk about the four parenting styles, and I would just like to encourage persons to blend
Yeah,
them
you
as
have
much
to
as possible.
blend.
Don't boxing yourself to one style. And I promoting love too. Love your
Mhm.
children. Spend some time with them. The tablet is not a parent, is not a
Mhm.
babysitter in no way. And that's been influencing our children negatively in so many ways because it's just one directional, feeding their minds in one way. Our children need communication, they need life skills, they need to be taught. We need to talk to them and know what's going on in their
Stimulation.
environment.
Mhm.
Yes, we need the stimulation. All right, they need it. So I would
Yeah.
say blend, love your children, and do the best you can as a parent. Don't give up. Don't
Mm-hmm.
give up. You
So
might
so
fall
what I
sometimes, but don't give up.
mm-hmm. Yeah, so what I got there is that the parent style that we're leaving you tonight with is love. All right? Because we don't want the neglectful part of it, but we're leaving love. So there we have it. And we've come to the end of our discussion on navigating parenting, how parenting styles impact the family and in turn society. And we trust that you found this conversation helpful. I'm seeing that we're being asked for part two. But I hope that tonight you would have been taking away all of those rich nuggets that came from uh, Cornelius and Suzanne and Chanel. And thank you so much for coming to share your wisdom with us. And thank you, viewers, for joining us. Remember to share on social media links. There may be some family who very well may be needing what we're talking about tonight. And don't forget to join us again on Sunday for another enriching discussion, which will focus on loss within the family, exploring the depths of grief and healing. Once again, I am Angelina Cotton, and do have a pleasant evening.
Best, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping the parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.